case of Alice Adams and Tibor Vass. Alice Adams and Tibor Vass were colleagues at the Radisson Blu Edwardian Heathrow Hotel. Living just 6 miles from the hotel, Alice had joined the team 3 weeks prior and quickly formed friendships with her co-workers, particularly Tibor. Born and raised in Budapest, Hungary, Tibor was a people person who loved music, playing almost every instrument, with the piano being his favorite. He had taught his younger sister, Isabella, to play piano, and they would often perform together for their parents. Tragedy struck in 2007 when Tibor's father passed away, leaving the family struggling to cope. Tibor, then a teenager, took on a more significant role in supporting his mother, Rosalia, and younger sister. At 15, he started working full-time to help alleviate his mother's burden. He later applied to the University of Budapest in 2008, hoping a college degree would lead to a better job and greater financial stability for his family. Despite his exceptional talent, Tibor was unfortunately denied admission to the university. Tibor discussed his plans to move to Great Britain with his mother, who seemed to support the idea. In July 2010, at the age of 19, Tibor relocated to the United Kingdom and settled in London. He began working at the Radisson Blu Edwardian Heathrow Hotel, where he enjoyed his job, responsibilities, and interactions with colleagues and new clients. Tibor quickly formed a bond with Alice, a talented musician, as they often found common topics to discuss. Both Tibor and Alice worked as receptionists at the hotel, along with Attila, a 31-year-old who had been employed there the longest. Attila was recognized as the hotel's best employee in 2010. As Tibor and Attila were both from Hungary, they developed a close relationship. The hotel provided accommodation for its new employees, and Attila and Tibor lived in a company apartment behind the hotel. This arrangement was convenient, as it saved them money and reduced their commute time. Tibor was thrilled to be in England, but he didn't abandon his plans for higher education. He reapplied to the university in Budapest and was accepted this time around. Overjoyed, he had to return to Hungary in August 2011. To bid him farewell, a small party was organized on August 9, 2011, attended by Tibor, Attila, Alice, and other hotel employees. The next day, the trio was scheduled to work, but none of them showed up. Their colleagues raised the alarm when they failed to report for work at 7 a.m., and the police were notified at 7:53 a.m. Upon arriving at the house, the police found the door unlocked and the interior quiet. When an officer opened the door, he was met with a disturbing scene. Alice lay on the living room floor, her face covered by a pillow with 22 stab wounds on her body, as later confirmed by the medical examiners. In the bedroom, Tibor's naked body was found on the bed, having died from 2 stab wounds to the heart. Attila, however, was nowhere to be found. The police surrounded the house to secure the area, and investigators and forensic experts started their investigation. As they examined the crime scene, they discovered that the bed where Tibor's body was found was not where he was actually killed. The bed was too tidy, indicating that Tibor had met his fate elsewhere. It appeared that the perpetrator had initially wounded him, removed his clothes, cleaned his body, and then placed him on the bed. Upon further inspection, the apartment was found to contain empty alcohol bottles and illicit substances, suggesting that they had been used during a party. Police officers thoroughly searched the house, the surrounding area, and the attic for Attila, but he was nowhere to be found. His personal belongings, including his papers, were still in the apartment. As a result, Attila became the prime suspect in the investigation. While forensic experts continued to analyze the crime scene, investigators began questioning Attila's co-workers at the hotel. The staff reported that Attila had taken a particular interest in Tibor, a new employee from the same country, immediately showing him around and helping him settle in. Attila even went so far as to adjust his work schedule to match Tibor's. Tibor was a young and attractive man who attracted a lot of female attention. However, investigators discovered that Attila had romantic feelings for Tibor, which he openly expressed. According to the hotel staff, Tibor had rejected Attila's advances, making Attila unhappy. Things took a turn for the worse when Alice joined the hotel staff 3 weeks before her death and Tibor started paying attention to her. Attila became jealous despite knowing that Tibor was only interested in women. The investigation raised an important question. Could Attila have committed the murder out of jealousy and unrequited love? A disturbing Facebook post from Attila made before the police discovered the bodies suggested that he was indeed involved. At 6:23 a.m., Attila had posted, "I would like to wake up from that nightmare." Friends commented on the post, expressing their concern, but Attila never responded. This message further solidified the investigators' suspicions that Attila Ban was responsible for the deaths of his colleagues. The number of stab wounds provided a clear indication of what had transpired. Alice sustained 22 stab wounds, while Tibor was stabbed only twice. Furthermore, the positioning of the victims was telling. Alice was found on the floor with a pillow over her face while Tibor was discovered on the bed. When investigators spoke with the other people who had been at the apartment earlier that night, they learned that Attila, Tibor, and Alice had been the only ones left behind. This suggested that the tragic events had unfolded after the others had left in the hours leading up to dawn. The news of Alice's death sent shockwaves through the families of both the victim and the perpetrator. The Adams family, Alice's family, released a statement in which her mother, Sarah, paid a heartfelt tribute to her daughter. She expressed her overwhelming grief, saying, "My heart is shattered into a million pieces. I will carry this sadness with me for the rest of my life. I deeply miss my beloved Alice and would do anything to have one more chance to hug her tightly and see her bright smile. The loss of my child has awakened intense emotions within our family, sorrow, anger, and a sense of devastation that we can hardly bear. As a mother, I feel that I failed to protect my child, and that realization is something I must confront every day. Not knowing exactly what happened to Alice on the night of her murder is a constant torment. I would rather face the harsh truth than be left to imagine the sequence of events that led to her death. Alice was an extraordinary and unique individual who brought so much love, joy, passion, and kindness into the lives of everyone she touched. Her loss is a tragedy that cannot be put into words." Meanwhile, police were searching for Attila Ban, but he seemed to have disappeared without a trace. When they attempted to track his phone, they found that it was transmitting signals from the same area as the hotel, which was unusual. It was later revealed that Attila was actually much closer than anyone had suspected. After spending 2 days examining the crime scene, the investigative team left the house only to have the forensic team return later to conduct additional tests. Upon re-entering the house, they found that the door they had left unlocked was now locked from the inside. Inside the room, they discovered Attila Ban lying on the bed, intoxicated and wounded after attempting to harm himself with scissors and a knife. The investigators questioned Attila, but he responded bizarrely, using gestures to convey his thoughts. He was then taken to the hospital for medical attention. Unbeknownst to the investigators, Attila had created a hiding space within the sofa bed where Tibor Vase's body was found. To create this makeshift hiding spot, he had made a slit in the bed space, grabbed a phone, several bottles of water, and climbed inside. Throughout the investigation, Attila had been secretly watching and listening to the police through the holes he had made. Attila Ban was arrested at the hospital as the main suspect in the crime. His trial began on July 9, 2012, and during the proceedings, details of the heinous crime were revealed. The party had escalated out of control after Tibor, Alice, and Attila were left alone in the apartment. Prosecutors confirmed that there was a consensual physical encounter between the three with DNA evidence found on Miss Adams' body. The evening took a devastating turn. Attila claimed to have no memory of the events that followed, only recalling waking up the next morning to find Alice and Tibor lifeless. Overcome with guilt and remorse, he considered taking his own life but was too afraid to do so alone. The court learned that Attila had been consumed by jealousy towards Tibor, particularly after a team-building event where he had thrown a tantrum because Tibor was in a photograph and he was not. The situation worsened when Attila discovered that Tibor had been accepted into a university program in Hungary and would be leaving the UK soon. The final trigger was likely witnessing Tibor and Alice kissing, which sent Attila into a fit of rage, ultimately leading him to take the lives of his two friends. Prosecutor Richard Widham revealed in court that Attila Ban was discovered naked on a single bed with injuries to his wrists, forearm, and neck. It was later found that he had been hiding in the base of a double bed. Remarkably, he had managed to conceal himself and remain undetected throughout the entire investigation, including the pathologist's examination, the removal of the bodies, and the crime scene examiner's investigation. When questioned about the oversight, Detective Inspector John Finch defended the police, stating that it would be impractical and potentially damaging to lift up every bed in search of people. He explained that this could result in the loss of crucial forensic evidence and was not a standard procedure in such cases. Rosalia, the mother of Tibor Vass, paid a heartfelt tribute to her son, remembering him as a friendly, outgoing, and talented young man. She recalled his childhood interests in music, arts, and sports, as well as his passion for photography, which led him to invest in a professional camera with his first paycheck. According to Rosalia, Tibor had many friends in both Hungary and the UK who appreciated his kind and supportive nature. She said that, on August 11th, I received devastating news. My 20-year-old son, Tibor, and his friend Alice had been murdered. The killer was a shocking revelation, Tibor's own friend, who I had trusted to look out for my son. This friend had personally promised to keep Tibor safe, which made the news even more difficult to accept. Days before the murder, I had taken comfort in knowing that Tibor had found a mature and intelligent friend in London. Now, I was consumed by grief and struggled to comprehend the tragedy. The subsequent police investigation and trial only added to my suffering, forcing me to relive the horrors of that fateful night. The pain and loss my family experiences will stay with us for the rest of our lives. The perpetrator, Attila Ban, pleaded guilty but claimed he couldn't recall the details of the crime. On July 18, 2012, the jury delivered a guilty verdict after just 5 hours of deliberation. A month later, on August 17th, Attila Ban was sentenced to 2 life terms. He will have to serve 26 years before being eligible for parole. 19-year-old Cara Nichols lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado in 2012. She was an aspiring model. On October 9, 2012, Cara left her home to go to Denver. She told her friends she was traveling for a photo shoot. When no one heard from Cara, her brother Terry Nichols reported her missing 5 days later on October 14th. In the years since she disappeared, investigators had leads to span the US and Europe and issued dozens of search warrants. Recently, he witnessed for investigators told them that a man by the name of Joel Hollendorfer confessed to taking the life of Cara. According to the witness, Hollendorfer and Cara met because she was advertising escort services. For an unknown reason, he decided to strangle her. Recently, Hollendorfer's property in Black Forest, Colorado was searched. Cara's remains were found buried there. In February of 2022, Hollendorfer was arrested in connection to the case. Investigators have not yet revealed more information than that. His hearing will be on September 15, 2022. 42-year-old Stephanie Thompson lived in North Charleston, South Carolina in 1998. She had 3 children, Dylan, Polly, and Ricky Thompson. On December 21, 1998, Stephanie's body was found approximately 20 feet into a wooded area off Franchise Street in North Charleston. Her body was discovered by a hunter who was looking for a place to squirrel hunt. Investigators found her lying face up on the ground, and her clothing below her waist had been removed. Investigators collected DNA evidence belonging to the suspect from the crime scene. A witness came forward saying that they saw Stephanie the previous evening with the man leaving a trailer on Franchise Street. The witness was able to provide a description of the man that led to a composite sketch. Investigators questioned a few suspects, but it didn't lead anywhere and the case went cold for some time. Recently, the case was reopened. Investigators knew they had a good DNA sample. It was sent to a private genetic genealogy testing company. The results of that test narrowed the search field. Finally, they identified 43-year-old Charles Goodwin as the man responsible. The match was made on December 10, 2021. He was arrested in Greenville, South Carolina on March 28, 2022. His DNA was in their database because he had been arrested in an unrelated felony DUI case. Investigators did not say whether they believe Goodwin and Thompson knew each other, but the warrant also alleges that Goodwin provided false and misleading information about his involvement in the case during interviews. When investigators told Goodwin why he was being arrested, he just said, "Okay," as if he was expecting it. Goodwin was taken to Georgetown County Sheriff's Office and is being held at the LC Knight Detention Center after a bond hearing during which a judge denied bond. The case of Diana D. Ielo. Diana Ielo was born in 1959 in Tustin, a suburb of Los Angeles. Her father was in the military, and her mother worked at a local garment factory. At the age of 19, Diana met Kevin Green when Diana was harassed by several men at a bar. Kevin intervened and chased the men away. In gratitude, Diana bought Kevin a drink. They went on a date a few days later, and their relationship quickly progressed. Kevin was in the process of divorcing his first wife. Kevin and Diana moved in together for a while, and Diana became pregnant. After Kevin's divorce was finalized, they got married. While waiting for their daughter to be born, they rented an apartment in Tustin. Kevin worked as a helicopter mechanic at a nearby Marine Corps base, while Diana stayed home to prepare for the baby's arrival, having previously worked with her mother in a garment factory. By late September 1979, Diana was nearly 9 months pregnant. On the evening of September 30th, Kevin and Diana got into an argument after watching a movie together. The impending birth of their daughter had put a strain on their relationship. To calm down and avoid escalating the situation, Kevin decided to drive to a nearby restaurant. About 40 minutes after the incident, Kevin called the local police department to report that his wife, Diana, had been shot and needed immediate medical attention. Police arrived on the scene shortly after receiving the call. When they entered the apartment, they found Diana lying on the bed, covered in blood, with a head wound that appeared to be a gunshot wound. However, upon closer examination, paramedics later determined that the wound was actually caused by blunt force trauma. When the police checked on Diana, found her alive and provided first aid until the ambulance arrived, they asked Kevin to leave the room. After the paramedics took over, they carefully transported Diana to the hospital. Meanwhile, the police asked Kevin to stay behind to give a statement. He told police that he and his wife had been arguing, so he decided to leave the apartment to calm down and buy some burgers at a fast food restaurant. In his haste, he realized he had left his keys inside, but chose not to go back to get them. Instead, he locked the door and went to his car. As Kevin drove away from the apartment complex, he noticed a truck with its back door open and an African-American man walking back and forth toward the truck. It was late, around 2 a.m. He drove to the fast food restaurant he frequented, but it was busy, so he went to another location a few miles away. After buying a burger, he drove home, which took 40 minutes. When he arrived, he found the front door wide open. He rushed inside and found his wife, Diana, covered in blood. He immediately called the police. Kevin's story had some suspicious signs, but when the police checked the fast food bag, they found the food was still warm and the receipt confirmed the time and place of purchase, supporting Kevin's story. As a result, the police allowed Kevin to go to the hospital, but not before asking him to provide a blood sample for further investigation. Although DNA analysis was not available at the time, experts could still compare the blood found at the crime scene with Kevin's blood type. When Diana arrived at the hospital, doctors determined that her head wound was not caused by a gunshot. Instead, it was likely inflicted by a small, heavy object. Unfortunately, Diana fell into a coma. The medical team worked diligently for several hours to save both her and her unborn child. After many hours of intense care, they were able to stabilize Diana's condition, but she still required surgery. During the investigation, police asked medical experts to determine whether Diana had been sexually assaulted. The experts confirmed that Diana had indeed been sexually assaulted, finding semen on her body. However, Kevin testified that he and Diana had had sex just hours before the argument. Diana and Kevin's family stayed in the hospital all night, and the next morning, the baby's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse. Doctors tried. Baby did not survive. Although Diana remained in a coma, her chances of survival had improved. However, doctors warned that she could suffer long-term effects. Although Kevin had an alibi, police were not quick to clear him due to several inconsistencies in his story. He had an argument with Diana just hours before the attack, left his front door unlocked, and spent much of the time on a quick trip to a fast food restaurant. His claim of seeing a suspicious person near his home at night also raised suspicions. However, there was no concrete evidence linking Kevin to the crime. Police are investigating another suspect in a series of similar crimes in the area. A year earlier, a series of break-ins and assaults had occurred in Tustin and surrounding areas with similar modus operandi. In December 1978, a 17-year-old girl was killed after being beaten with a piece of wood and sexually assaulted. 4 months later, a 21-year-old woman was murdered and sexually assaulted. In July 1979, a woman was attacked in her apartment but survived, although she was in a coma for several weeks. Her testimony provided no new leads. Prior to Diana's attack, a similar attack occurred in September 1979, when a 34-year-old woman was murdered. A series of crimes occurred, all with striking similarities to the attack on Diana. The police believed they were dealing with a serial killer and focused their efforts on capturing him. To address the growing concern, the police decided to issue a public warning through the media, specifically targeting women living alone and those living in low-rise apartments, who appeared to be the serial killer's favorite targets. The warning caused panic, and in response, the police increased night patrols in the area. The police began by interviewing and soon received their first leads. Several of the victims' neighbors reported seeing a suspicious white man with thick black hair near their home. Although the description was somewhat vague, the police were able to identify several men who matched and investigate them. Unfortunately, these leads did not lead to any cases. A week after Diana was attacked, her doctors informed her loved ones that she had finally regained consciousness. However, there was a serious concern: Diana was unable to speak or remember anything. According to her doctors, her brain was still recovering. Around the same time, another attack occurred in Tustin. An unknown assailant broke into the apartment of a 24-year-old woman, striking her multiple times with a piece of wood and sexually assaulting her. Tragically, the victim died and the police were once again unable to catch the perpetrator. Diana spent several days in the hospital, recovering from her injuries. During this time, her mind slowly cleared, but she had lost almost all of her memory. Doctors told her family that her memories might return, but warned them not to remind her of anything, letting her remember on her own. After being stabilized, Diana was discharged from the hospital and her family took her home. Her husband Kevin had to work at the military base, so Diana was sent to live with Diana's parents. 2 weeks later, another attack occurred in the city, similar to the one on Diana. This time, the attacker killed a 17-year-old girl. Diana began attending physical therapy sessions and her condition gradually improved. Although she still could not speak or remember the attack, a breakthrough occurred 6 weeks later during a therapy session. The doctor asked Diana if she could remember who attacked her. To the doctor's surprise, Diana suddenly pointed to her wedding ring. The doctor shared this information with Diana's mother when she came to pick her up. Diana's mother asked her daughter if her husband, Kevin, was the one who attacked her, and Diana nodded. Diana's mother immediately took her to the police station to speak with the chief. After asking Diana a few more questions, the police confirmed that she remembered her attacker and identified him as her husband, Kevin. This new information dramatically changed the course of the investigation. Police suspected that Diana's attack was related to a series of similar incidents in the area committed by a serial offender. However, Kevin matched the suspect's description, leading police to question whether Kevin could be the culprit behind these attacks. The police asked Diana and her mother to pretend that Diana had not recovered her memory and to return home with Kevin, but they agreed to do so. Meanwhile, the police kept a close watch on Kevin, monitoring his every move in the hope of finding evidence of a crime linked to the serial murders. Crime scene testing revealed evidence under Diana's fingernails, where they found bloody skin particles, in addition to the attacker's semen. After analyzing the evidence, police found a match between the attacker's blood type and Kevin's blood sample, indicating that Kevin was the one who attacked Diana. As for a motive, Police suspect that Diana's refusal to have sex with Kevin may have prompted the attack. Although Kevin insists that they had sex earlier that night, the police spoke to Diana, and she remembered the attack clearly, confirming that Kevin was her killer. During the conversation, her mother expressed that they could no longer live with Kevin, and the police decided to arrest him. To protect Diana's family, Kevin was arrested at a store instead of at their home. Despite his arrest, Kevin maintained his innocence. Preparations for the trial lasted 10 months, during which time Diana's health gradually improved. She regained her ability to speak. Diana was cleared of the charges, and her husband was found guilty of assaulting her. Kevin's defense team tried to use his fast food alibi, but it was not enough to disprove Diana's testimony. As a result, Kevin was convicted in November 1980 of the child's murder and assault on Diana. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Police learned that 2 similar crimes had occurred in their district before Kevin was arrested, but both victims survived. Although the identity of the attacker remains unknown, these incidents raised suspicions that Kevin was involved in other crimes. The attacks stopped abruptly after Kevin was arrested. After Kevin's sentencing, Diana promptly filed for divorce, which Kevin did not contest. Diana then focused on her recovery. When Kevin became eligible for parole, the committee denied his request, a decision that was repeated 3 more times. The serial killer case remained unsolved until 1996, when police reopened the investigation. Semen samples from the victims, which had been stored in a laboratory, were retested. Police wanted to determine who the culprit was, and DNA analysis yielded a surprising result. Gerald Parker, a man arrested the same year as Kevin, was found to have a DNA match to the serial murders. After the DNA match confirmed Parker's involvement in the serial murders, investigators re-examined the attack on Diana. Parker and Kevin worked together on a military base, and Parker owned a dark-colored van, similar to the one described in the attacks. During his initial police interview, Kevin reported seeing an African-American man near a dark-colored truck in front of their home on the day of the attack. This information led police to consider the possibility that Parker was involved in the attack on Diana. While Kevin was in jail, the local prosecutor updated him on the progress of the bedroom basher serial murder investigation. The prosecutor asked Kevin to provide a DNA sample, which he quickly agreed to. While the DNA analysis was underway, police visited Parker in prison to discuss the case. Although they had not yet formally charged him with the attacks, they hoped to gather more information. Parker initially denied any involvement in the crimes, so detectives focused their questioning on the attack on Diana. During questioning, Parker revealed that on the night of the incident, he drove his truck to Kevin's house, intending to circle the neighborhood, looking through the ground floor windows for a victim. However, this time, he heard screaming coming from Kevin and Diana's apartment, and when Kevin left the house, Parker noticed that the door was unlocked, so he waited a few minutes before entering the apartment and attacking Diana. Parker revealed that he did not know Kevin's wife because they worked in different areas of the military base. He also confessed to committing 6 murders and 3 non-fatal attacks. After Parker's confessions, DNA evidence confirmed his guilt in Kevin's innocence. The prosecutor quickly moved to overturn Kevin's sentence, and he was released from prison after 16 years. The case has caused widespread outrage, not only because an innocent man spent nearly half his life in prison, but also because it took so long for police to identify the real killer. When Kevin was released, the state of California paid him $10,000 in compensation, but relatively small amount. Years later, he received an additional $100 for each day he spent in prison, totaling $620,000. Despite Kevin's exoneration, his wife Diana initially refused to believe he was innocent. She had previously claimed that Kevin was her only attacker. However, after DNA evidence from her body matched Parker's, she changed her story. Diana reported that Kevin attacked her before leaving the apartment, and then Parker entered and attacked her as well. However, Parker said that when he entered the house, Diana was lying on the bed without any injuries or signs of distress. He also admitted to hitting her on the head. Diana's family proposed an alternative theory suggesting that Kevin might have conspired with Parker to commit the crime, which would explain why Kevin left the house that night, leaving the door open. However, Parker denied knowing Kevin, pointing out that the military base was large and many people didn't know each other personally. Parker denied knowing Kevin. Kevin also denied any involvement with Parker, insisting that he would never harm Diana or their unborn daughter. He explained that he left the door open because he didn't want to go back to get the keys after their argument. And he still blames himself for that decision. As for Parker, he was sentenced to death in 1999, but this sentence has yet to be carried out. After years of waiting on death row, California imposed a moratorium on executions. And as a result, Parker remains incarcerated to this day. Barbara Callow grew up in Toronto, Canada. She graduated from the University of Guelph's Veterinary College with her master's degree. Barbara then worked as a researcher for a few years before being hired by the federal government in 1992 as a meat inspector. She then moved to veterinary biologics and was promoted to the science branch to advise on animal health issues. Barbara was an avid gardener, bicyclist, art enthusiast, and bird watcher. She loved to travel and excelled in her career, where she came across to colleagues as a brilliant, adventurous go-getter. In 2005, 45-year-old Barbara decided to see the desert wildflowers bloom in Arizona. She left her home on March 25, 2005, traveled to Abbotsford, British Columbia, and then to Las Vegas, Nevada, where she rented a car on March 26. Barbara then drove to Yuma, Arizona, where she spent the day. She then drove to Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and checked into a motel called the Windsor Inn Motel on April 2nd. She used the room as a base for day trips. Barbara was last seen alive by staff at about 8:40 p.m. on April 4th. Thereafter, she called her mother, Bridget Callow, in Toronto to say that she was planning to stay another day in Lake Havasu before driving to Las Vegas to fly home. Her body was found by housekeepers shortly before noon the next day on April 5th. An autopsy revealed that the cause was asphyxiation after being smothered by a pillow. No weapons were found in the room. Barbara's purse, credit cards, cell phone, identification, rented car, and the pillow were missing. The stolen car was found 2 days later abandoned along Interstate 15 in California's Mojave Desert. Investigators collected DNA belonging to the suspect from the crime scene and stored it for future use. At the time, Lake Havasu Police Lieutenant Joe Archie said it was believed that Barbara had confronted someone trying to break into her rental car. "It's possible she knew the person, but most likely not," said Archie. "We think it was just kind of a situation where she was in the wrong spot at the wrong time." In 2018, Lake Havasu's police department's cold case squad and its criminal investigations unit began reinvestigating the case. They submitted the DNA evidence found at the crime scene back in 2005 into DNA databases. Finally, they identified 60-year-old Stacy Childs as the man responsible. He was arrested on April 26, 2022. He is a Santa Cruz, California resident. Childs has a long history of run-ins with the law. Among the charges of which he was found guilty in California were a 2018 misdemeanor for threatening to injure someone, a felony conviction for receiving stolen property in 2012, a felony conviction for evading a peace officer in 2005, and a felony conviction in 2004 for false imprisonment. On the latter two charges, he was sentenced to serve more than 2.5 years in San Quentin State Prison. He has now been taken to a jail in Arizona and is awaiting trial. On July 2, 1996, a man's body was found in a room at the Prince Murat Motel in Tallahassee, Florida. The man was 44-year-old James Bronner. An autopsy determined that he had been asphyxiated. James was a laborer who worked odd jobs around town. Investigators collected DNA belonging to the suspect from the crime scene. In 1996, DNA technology was not advanced enough to identify the suspect, so the case went cold. In 2020, Tallahassee Police Department detectives reopened the case and used new forensic technology to analyze the DNA found at the original crime scene. Investigative leads were developed with the help of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia company that provides DNA phenotype services for police. Detectives eventually developed enough probable cause to arrest 71-year-old Alan Lefferts in connection to the case. His DNA matched the suspect's DNA found at the crime scene. Lefferts was picked up at his home in Jacksonville, Florida, with assistance from the Baker County Sheriff's Office. Tallahassee Police Department Deputy Chief Jason Larson said in a statement, "Solving a case that occurred nearly 26 years ago speaks volumes to the dedication and great collaborative effort between our state and local law enforcement partners. Our detectives and forensic specialists work tirelessly every day to seek justice for victims and ensure those responsible for crimes are held accountable. We're hopeful this arrest will bring some level of closure to the victims' surviving loved ones. As Lefferts did not confess, we don't know why he took the life of James Bronner." Skeletal remains were found in June of 1974 in an area known as the Burnt Bridges along the A1A Bridge in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The remains belonged to a young white woman. Detectives at the time believed she was between the ages of 15 and 20. It could not be determined how she lost her life, but it was noted that she was found tied up in the mangroves to a tree. Recently, DNA that was obtained from the remains were entered into the National Database for Unidentified Persons, but they could not find a match. It wasn't until November 2021 that genealogy tests were performed on the remains by scientists working at Othroom Lab. This resulted in the victim's identification. In June of 2022, she was identified as Susan Gailpool. Susan was born on February 12, 1957 and lived in a trailer park in North Fort Lauderdale. Susan was 15 years old when she disappeared just before Christmas in 1972. Her family did report her missing back then. Susan's sister Patty had this to say about the identification. "I had always hoped she would come back. The search is finally over." Investigators believe Susan was a victim of Gerard Schaefer. Schaefer committed many similar crimes. He lived in the same area as Susan back in 1974. He got arrested for kidnapping 2 girls, taking them out on the A1A bridge and tying them up in mangroves. Schaefer was known to pick up girls who were hitchhiking. Friends of Susan told investigators that Susan often hitchhiked. He was convicted for his crimes and his life was taken in prison in 1996. While detectives believe he is responsible for what happened to Susan, they do not have any physical evidence linking him to the crime. Susan's mother is still alive and is now under 90s. She has also been informed about the identification. Tipsters may remain anonymous by calling Crime Stoppers at 800-458-TIPS. Valerie Reyes is a 24-year-old girl. She grew up in a loving family in the suburbs of New York. Valerie has 3 younger brothers. Valerie is cheerful, sociable, and friendly. Valerie is very close to her mother. The two share their private secrets and often discuss everything like 2 best friends. Valerie has many different talents, including drawing and singing. However, her true passion is to become a professional tattoo artist. With the guidance of her brother, who has experience in this field, Valerie learned and developed her skills. She dreams of opening a tattoo shop with her brother, where they can turn their creative ideas into reality. During this time, Valerie works part-time at a small, cozy bookstore. Valerie's life took a major turn in January 2018. That's when she met Javier da Silva, a 26-year-old Venezuelan man who had just moved to New York on a popular dating site. Javier told a touching story about how he had to flee his country in crisis to save his life. Because of this, he was unable to complete his university studies. Currently, Javier is working hard in a restaurant to build a new life in a foreign country. Valerie felt sympathy for him and they started a romantic relationship after a few dates. However, the relationship developed too quickly and only lasted about 3 months. Javier mentioned marriage, which scared Valerie because she was not ready. After feeling that everything was moving too fast, Valerie decided to end the relationship. Javier initially made a good impression on Valerie's family because he seemed to care about her and wanted the best for her. However, when Valerie expressed her desire to break up, Javier's behavior changed. He refused to accept the end of the relationship. He sent dozens of messages a day, begging Valerie to continue the relationship. In September 2018, Javier called Valerie. He said he had used her bank card to pay for an online purchase and wanted to meet Valerie to return the money. Valerie immediately sensed something was wrong and suspected that it was just an excuse to meet. Valerie then confided in a friend and asked the friend to talk to Javier so that he would stop bothering her. After the conversation, Javier stopped calling and texting. Valerie felt relieved and could finally return to her normal life with small joys and exciting plans for the future. However, Valerie did not know that the worst was yet to come. On January 24, 2019, Javier, whom Valerie had broken up with long ago and had not kept in touch with, wrote to an acquaintance of Valerie. In the letter, Javier claimed that he had caught Valerie in bed with another man. This information surprised and angered Valerie because she knew it was not true. January 27th, after her shift at the bookstore, Valerie returned home and called her mother Anna Reyes in a state of panic. She cried and screamed into the phone that someone wanted to kill her. Valerie had been worried for days and felt that someone was following her. Valerie was so distressed that she could only cry into. After a while of talking to her mother, Valerie seemed to feel a little better. Before going to bed, Valerie texted her mother that she had calmed down and was ready to go to bed. Valerie's family became worried when she did not show up for dinner on January 29th. They kept calling her, but did not receive any answer. This made the family feel scared and uneasy. After waiting for a long time, the family decided to seek help from the police. On January 30th, they went to the police and filed a missing persons report for Valerie. The police immediately began investigating the case and began searching Valerie's apartment, but found no significant clues. There were no signs of a struggle or kidnapping. There were only small bloodstains on the pillowcase in the bathroom, but the police thought it could be a simple injury. The police decided to look for Valerie and contacted her mobile operator. They discovered that Valerie's phone had been switched to airplane mode on the night of January 28th at around 3 a.m. Since then, the phone had not been turned on. This made the police and Valerie's family even more worried. But the most alarming fact was that someone had accessed Valerie cloud storage and carefully studied all her photos, videos, and messages. Another worrying detail was that at 5 a.m. on January 29th, just 2 hours after the phone was turned off, someone had withdrawn $1,000 from Valerie's bank account. Surveillance cameras captured a man driving a black Honda to the ATM, quickly taking the money and disappearing. When the license plate was checked, police quickly determined that the car belonged to Javier, Valerie's ex-boyfriend. He was immediately placed on the list of prime suspects. During a search of Javier's home, no evidence was found relating to Valerie's disappearance. However, surveillance camera footage showed that on the evening of January 28th, Javier left the house in a black Honda and went to Valerie's residence. Police checked Valerie's phone and found that there had been no calls or messages from Javier in recent months. This indicated that Valerie had not invited Javier to visit or meet. After Valerie went missing, Javier turned off his phone so his movements could not be tracked. However, at 6 a.m., his cell phone briefly became active near Harrison, Connecticut. At 7:30 a.m., the phone was found in Greenwich. Javier returned home to Queens at 9:43 a.m., as confirmed by nearby cameras. Police later found that Javier had posted an old photo of them on Instagram the night before Valerie went missing. His posting of this photo could have been to let people know that they were still together, or it could have been some kind of secret sign. While the police were investigating Valerie's disappearance, Valerie's family and friends continued to search for her. They posted flyers with Valerie's picture and checked all of Valerie's usual haunts. A week passed in anxiety with sleepless nights and exhausting searches, but still no results. On February 5th, highway workers saw a red suitcase on the side of the road. When they opened the suitcase, they saw a horrifying scene. Inside the suitcase was the body of a young woman. Her hands and feet were tied tightly with rope. Her mouth was sealed with a thick layer of tape. Her thin shirt was torn. Her jeans were torn and dirty. The girl was not wearing shoes. People noticed a terrible wound on her head. They immediately called the police to report the incident. The police arrived at the scene. Through tests, they quickly identified the victim as Valerie Reyes. Valerie's parents received news about their daughter. During the autopsy, the gruesome details of the murder were revealed. Before her death, Valerie had been severely beaten in the head with a blunt object, and then, while still alive, She had been stuffed into a suitcase and left to die. The evidence that Javier Dilva was involved in the murder was that Valerie's bank card was found in his wallet. During questioning, Javier gave a surprising explanation. Javier claimed that he had found Valerie's bank card and ID card at the bar. The police presented all the evidence they had gathered, including surveillance camera footage, details of his car, and the movements of his phone on the night of the incident. The police told Javier that they knew he was at Valerie's house on the night of the incident. Javier later changed his story. Javier admitted that he had been drinking too much that night and might have been at Valerie's house, but he didn't know everything. When the police showed him a photo of Valerie's body in a suitcase, Javier was shocked and cried. JV tried to justify his actions. According to his account, Javier went to Valerie's house that night after she invited him. They had sex, but during sex, Valerie collapsed to the floor and lost consciousness. Javier claimed that he wanted to help Valerie and performed CPR and cardiac massage on her, but all were unsuccessful. To avoid being charged with murder, he tried to hide the evidence of the crime. However, when the police asked why Valerie's body was found bound and gagged, Javier was unable to answer. When police later asked about Valerie's bank card, Javier stated that he had withdrawn another $4,350 from Valerie's account. During a search of Javier's home, Valerie's phone and laptop, which he had taken, were also found. Javier finally collapsed after a thorough examination of Valerie's body. There were signs of struggle and violence on her body. Under Valerie's fingernails, Javier's skin and blood were found. Javier's DNA was everywhere on the suitcase, in the car interior, on Valerie's belongings. Javier was immediately arrested and formally charged with the murder of Valerie Reyes. Under the pressure of irrefutable evidence, Javier da Silva finally fully admitted his guilt in court. On February 5, 2020, a hearing was held in the case of 24-year-old Valerie Reyes. Javier's lawyer tried to defend his actions, arguing that it was the result of a violent and jealous outburst, depression after the breakup with Valerie, and drug use. On September 3, 2021, the court affirmed that 28-year-old Javier da Silva was sentenced to 30 years in prison. This means that he will spend most of his life behind bars. The investigation also found that Javier had been living in the United States illegally. He arrived in the country on May 8, 2017, and his 90-day stay expired on August 5, 2017. Therefore, after serving his 30-year prison sentence, he will be immediately deported to his native Venezuela. 22-year-old Christopher Hervey lived in Santa Ana, California in 1996. His girlfriend, Jade Bridegan, lived with him and she was also 22 years old. At 3 a.m. on January 4, 1996, Jade called 911. She said that a man broke into their apartment and fatally stabbed Christopher. According to her, she suffered a minor cut to her right hand when she struggled with the intruder. A witness also told police they saw a man running from the apartment building. Investigators discovered Christopher's body with multiple wounds to his chest. They couldn't find the weapon anywhere. Neighbors told police how they heard a loud argument taking place shortly before Christopher was stabbed, lasting for around 15 minutes. Investigators continued to work the case, but their leads went cold until an anonymous letter arrived in January 2020 that implicated Bridegan in the case. A cold case detective believed there to be enough after following up on the case, and obtained a criminal complaint from the Orange County District Attorney's Office together with a warrant for Bridegan's arrest. 48-year-old Jade Bridegan, who now lives in Austin, Texas, was arrested on May 3, 2022, near her home after an investigation that involved forensics. Agents from the U.S. Marshals Lone Star Fugitive Task Force arrested her. Detectives from the Santa Ana Police Department were also present to witness Bridegan being apprehended. She had been extradited to California to face the charges and she is being held on a $1 million bail. We don't know exactly what led to the arrest, but we do know that evidence against her includes something police found when they executed search warrants in Austin, Texas in June 2020. Bridegan is currently in Orange County Jail. Her arraignment is scheduled for June 8, 2022. 35-year-old Joy Hibbs lived in Croydon, Pennsylvania in 1991. She was married to Charlie Hibbs. They had 2 children, Angie, and David. On April 19, 1991, when 12-year-old David came home from school, he found the house ablaze. He ran for help, knowing that his mother was most likely inside. Firefighters found Joy's body in David's room. Initially, police believed she passed away in an accidental house fire. They found 4 gas burners on the kitchen stove that were turned on and ignited. When the autopsy was done, investigators determined that she was deceased before the fire was set. Police discovered what was later found to be a computer cord wrapped around Joy's upper torso. The autopsy determined she had been stabbed 5 times, strangled and badly beaten. The autopsy also showed what would turn out to be an important detail. Joy Hibbs had smoked marijuana the morning of the fire. It'll make sense later on why this detail is important. Investigators quickly concluded the fire was set to destroy evidence of the crime, and authorities said it was largely successful, as much of the forensic evidence police would hope to find was destroyed. The fire marshal found 4 areas where the fire started, and in at least one spot accelerant was likely used. Without the forensic evidence, Bristol Township Police dug into Joy's life, creating a working timeline for when her life was taken and the arson. She left a paper trail showing her moves on the morning of the fire. She cashed her paycheck at a bank and went grocery shopping, which was her normal Friday routine. She then came home around 11 a.m. and a neighbor reported seeing her walking the family's new puppy named Major. 2 people from the Ben Salem Baptist Church, where Joy attended Easter services, dropped by to talk about joining the congregation sometime after 11 a.m. They left before noon. It was shortly after 1 p.m. when David returned home from school to find the house on fire. Joy's wallet was later found in the cushions of the living room couch, but it was empty, though she had cast her check hours earlier. Her purse was found on the kitchen floor, with its contents dumped out. This implied that robbery could be the motive, but it didn't quite make sense to investigators. Taking someone's life in such a vicious way and then set the house on fire for just a few $100s. Police interviewed her employer, friends, neighbors, and family, but found that everyone who knew her seemed to love the mom that grew up the youngest of 9 children in Central Florida. She camped, hiked, fished, grew vegetables, and loved making fried okra. Since many crimes of this nature are usually committed by the spouse, Charlie Hibbs was of course looked into. There was no sign of trouble in their marriage. Joy and Charlie were high school sweethearts. They celebrated their 18th wedding anniversary less than a week before her life was ended. Charlie also had a solid alibi. He was on a job site in Philadelphia, something co-workers confirmed. The only thing out of the ordinary that day was a dark-colored Monte Carlo parked 3 feet from the curb near the Hibbs. A neighbor who noticed the vehicle later reported it to police, telling them it was unusual for a car to be parked directly in front of the Hibbs home, which was at a T intersection. Robert Adkins soon became a suspect in the case. He sold marijuana occasionally to Joy. He owned a Chevy Monte Carlo. As you'll remember, Joy smoked marijuana on the morning of the fire. With a car similar to his scene in front of her house, this likely meant Adkins was at the scene around the time of the crime. Investigators learned that Joy and Adkins had argued over the quality of the drug he sold her, and Adkins refused to refund the money. While investigators believed it was possible that Adkins was involved, they couldn't prove it. The case made the rounds around Bristol Township police detectives over the years, until it was assigned to Bristol Township Detective Michael Slaughter in 2014. He dug into the reports and re-interviewed investigating officers and witnesses from 1991. Slaughter also determined that Robert Atkins and his then-wife April were persons of interest. When Slaughter had shown up for a surprise interview with April Atkins in 2014, she told him that Bristol Township Police had never interviewed her about her ex-husband, despite his alibi that placed the couple together in the Poconos with their children the weekend of Joy's demise. April Atkins told Slaughter that she and her husband and children were in the Poconos that weekend, and when they returned they heard about what happened to Joy. The Bristol Township detective interviewed Robert Atkins 2 days after he spoke with his ex-wife in 2014. During that interview, Robert Atkins admitted to being a confidential informant for Bristol Township Police Department at the time of the crime, and that he had been a methamphetamine user and got the drug for other people, though he didn't consider himself a dealer. He also admitted to the dispute over poor quality marijuana with Joy, but denied threatening her or her family. He just simply couldn't give Joy a refund, he told the detective. Atkins claimed he had left Bristol Township around noon the day of the fire for a weekend trip to the Poconos with his wife and children. He said he could provide an alibi too, telling Slaughter a lady, later described as a co-worker of his wife, could confirm his whereabouts in 1991. Atkins also said that Bristol Township police checked the hotel where he stayed at in the Poconos, and that cleared him further. More than a year later, in a December 2015 interview with Slaughter, former Chief Tom Mills confirmed that in 1991, Atkins was a confidential informant for the police purchasing methamphetamine and marijuana. Mills told Slaughter that he interviewed Atkins for the first time 2 days after the crime in 1991, when he was asked by a lieutenant to deliver a message to Atkins to contact police before his name came up in the investigation. Mills and Detective Al Ilac, who was Atkinson's handler, went to Atkinson's apartment, but he wouldn't let them inside. Mills said he noticed a dark-colored 70s vintage Monte Carlo in the apartment complex parking lot. In 2016, April Atkins showed up at the Bristol Township Police Station on a Sunday. She wanted to tell Slaughter, whose business card she saved, what really happened the day Joy Hibbs lost her life. She said that day, her ex-husband showed up at the home covered in blood. He confessed he had stabbed someone and set the house on fire. He ordered her to call out of work and pack up their kids. The family fled to the Poconos for 2 days. April Atkins, who at the time shared a young child and baby with her husband, learned about Joy Hibbs only after the family returned, she told police. April Atkins said she didn't tell police what she knew when Slaughter first interviewed her in 2014, because she feared for her third and youngest child's safety because he lived with Robert Atkins at the time. Another 5 years would pass before Bucks County detectives would speak with Robert Atkinson's alleged alibi. A former co-worker of April Atkins, who provided Robert Atkins with what authorities now say is a fake alibi. The woman told investigators in 2021 that police interviewed her in June of 1991, 3 days after Robert Atkins shared her contact information with them. The woman told police she called the Atkinsons' home between 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. on April 19, 1991, and Robert Atkins answered the phone. In May of 2022, 56-year-old Robert Atkins was charged in connection to the case. He was arraigned by Judge Frank Parantu, Sr. in Bristol, and ordered to Bucks County Correctional Center without bail. The Bucks County District Attorney's Office held a news conference with DA Matt Weintraub, saying it was a gratifying day when he could bring closure to the Hibbs family with an arrest. In a statement read on behalf of the family by Weintraub, Joy Hibbs was described as a sweet, charming Southern girl, and a loving and devoted wife and mother. For 31 years our family has been haunted by this tragic, lost knowing, without a doubt, that Robert Atkins was the perpetrator, the statement read. Our family has waited 31 years for justice to prevail. Authorities continue to investigate, and anyone with information should contact either Detective Hanks at 215-348-6056 or Sergeant Slaughter at 215-785-4040. The case of Chad Entzel. Chad was born and raised in Bismarck. He attended university, majoring in mechanical engineering and design. Upon graduation, he returned to Bismarck and began working as an engineer at a local company. Friends and acquaintances describe him as a simple and kind man. In addition to his engineering work, Chad is a coach for a youth baseball team. On weekends, he spends time coaching young athletes and playing sports. He always remains calm and is not someone who likes to cause trouble. His cheerful personality does not seem like someone who is suffering from mental problems or who is thinking about quitting life. On April 6, 2015, Chad shared on social media that he was dating a woman named Nikki, who is 3 years older than he is. Friends noted that he seemed very happy at that time. A year later, in 2016, they got married. Nikki had 2 teenage sons from a previous relationship and worked in transportation for a food company. She was confident and often posted selfies on her social media with only a couple of photos featuring her sons. She has an erratic temperament and often expresses her frustration with store employees. This causes a lot of conflict, causing many people to choose to avoid communicating with her. In addition to her main job at a food company, Nikki also runs a small business that specializes in catering for events and celebrations, particularly in making sweets and baked goods. She has been successful in this field with many appealing creations showcased on her social media pages. On the outside, she and Chad appear to be a successful couple. He works at a large company in a managerial position while she balances her job at the food company with running her own business. They raised 2 children together and everything seemed to be going smoothly until January 2nd, 2020, when Nikki had to call emergency services. At approximately 5:30 p.m. on January 2nd, 2020, 911 emergency services received a call. The incident took place 15 minutes from Bismarck, North Dakota, at a farmhouse surrounded by cornfields. The caller's name was Nikki. She said she had been unable to contact her husband Chad for several days and decided to visit him. However, when she arrived, she could not enter the house because it was filled with smoke. She couldn't see what was happening inside but believed her husband was there. Emergency responders, including paramedics, firefighters, and police officers, quickly arrived to help. Upon investigation, they discovered that the fire had started in the guest bedroom on the 2nd floor, where Chad was thought to be. Firefighters swiftly extinguished the flames and later found the charred body of a man lying on the bedroom floor. He was completely naked and had some sort of weapon placed on the bed, but away from his reach. This suggests that someone moved the weapon there, as it was not possible for him to have injured himself and then moved the weapon on his own. Police quickly determined that Chad had inflicted the injuries on himself. However, the lack of burns from a weapon suggested that the injury was likely caused by a distant impact. It could have been caused by a gas heater, which is known to be a dangerous source of heat that can cause fires, despite the risks. Gas heating systems remain popular in the United States due to their affordability and convenience. When the police arrived at the basement, they found another source of ignition, a badly burned stove on the lower level. The stove may have overheated during use and become the starting point for the fire. The entire situation was riddled with inconsistencies. The crime scene looked like a poorly staged incident. The strange points in this case are becoming more and more clear. Chad and Nikki live together and raise their children together. So why is she away from home for many days? This caught the attention of the police, who began questioning people close to the family. Chad's friends and co-workers said they had not seen him for days. This was strange because he was a department head and did not usually miss work. Chad was very responsible, so it was unusual for him to miss work. At the very least, he would have called his supervisor to let them know he could not come in. Concerns grew. Chad was last seen on December 30th, 2019, when he was captured on surveillance cameras at a local bowling alley. The next day, he did not show up for work. His wife, Nikki, called the company to inform them that her husband was seriously ill and needed a few days to recover. January 1st was a holiday, but on Monday, everyone at the company expected him to return. Yet he did not appear. Co-workers decided to call Chad to check on him. However, they were unable to reach him, prompting them to call the police to report the situation. They subsequently requested a welfare check on him. At approximately 1:20 p.m. on January 2nd, 2020, the police arrived at Chad's home. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. After waiting for a while and looking through the windows, they saw nothing unusual. The house was quiet. They did not conduct a thorough search or enter the home, believing they did not have the authority to do so. They assumed he had gone out to celebrate the holidays. They reported back to Chad's company that he was not home and that they could not assist further. They then left. Chad's co-workers suspected something was wrong, so they contacted his wife, Nikki. She stated that she was at work, but promised to check on him as soon as she got off. At 5:30 p.m., she called 911 and reported that she could not enter the house due to a strong smell of smoke, particularly in the room where Chad's body was found. Forensic scientists uncovered clear signs of arson. A mattress had been burned, possibly by a nearby gas heater. There were cigarette butts and empty whiskey bottles on the floor. However, the police were particularly puzzled as to why Nikki and the children were not home under the circumstances. Why had she and Chad not seen each other for several days? Detectives invited Nikki in for questioning to gather more information about the case. She was deeply affected by her husband's death and expressed her distress, mentioning that he often smoked inside their home, which she suggested might have caused the fire. Her testimony made investigators suspicious. They believed that her husband's death was not an accident, but a deliberate murder. So they continued to question her. Nikki then explained why she had been absent from home, stating that the stove had broken down and she had to temporarily stay in a hotel because she couldn't stand the cold. However, the strange thing was that the children were not with her or Chad, but living with her mother. During her account of the events, she unexpectedly mentioned that she had to move the children because Chad, her husband, was a cruel alcoholic. She had never mentioned anything negative about him before, only positive things. However, she now stated that both she and the children had been abused by him. She had many photos showing the bruises and injuries her husband had caused. She admitted to the police that she and her children had moved away to escape her abusive husband. Nikki found a job in a new place and was preparing to move in a week. However, her plans changed drastically with the death of her husband. Now that she had no need or reason to run away, she decided to stay. At that time, the investigators had no evidence against Nikki, so they released her, but continued to treat her as a suspect. The next day, the autopsy results came back. Forensic experts discovered that Chad had suffered severe facial injuries from a weapon, and the entire front half of his body had been burned. He was lying on his back when the fire broke out, which resulted in less burn damage to his back, where experts found bullet marks. Obviously, he couldn't have injured himself in the back with that bullet, and if he had intended to end his life, there would have been much simpler ways. The cause of death was determined to be injuries from a weapon, and Chad had died before the fire broke out. There was no soot in his airways, and the forensic expert concluded he had been dead for several days, meaning he could not have ignited the fire. It was clearly not his doing. Someone murdered him and tried to make it look like he took his end life. With these details, Nikki became the prime suspect. Nikki contacted her insurance company to claim compensation for the damage to her property after the fire. Investigators discovered that just days before the fire, on December 26th, the family had registered their home with the insurance company. Less than a week later, the house burned down under suspicious circumstances. Furthermore, during the police investigation of the crime scene, they discovered a package in the kitchen addressed to a man named Earl Howard. This new suspect needed to be investigated, and he was found quickly. In her initial interrogation, Nikki claimed she had rented a hotel room. However, it was later revealed that the room was registered to Earl Howard, the man named on the package. He was an ordinary working man who spent most of his free time at home. Originally from Canada, he had moved to Bismarck, North Dakota, USA, for a job opportunity. Soon after, Nikki was taken back to the police station for questioning again. The detectives began asking her leading questions about Earl. Initially, she denied knowing him, but then she unexpectedly admitted to having a relationship with him. She claimed that they had been having an affair for a year, that Chad knew about it and accepted the situation. She then maintained a relationship with Earl. During this time, her alcohol consumption increased, and she faced frequent insults from Chad. Throughout the interrogation, portrayed herself as a victim. She cried often, but sometimes spoke so softly that the police had to ask her to raise her voice. Experienced detectives suspected she was being insincere and was merely trying to evoke sympathy. After being pressured, her attitude changed, and she stopped crying. She realized that tears could not convince the detectives. So after being advised, she continued to tell the story clearly. Nikki finally provided details about the incident that led to Chad's death on the evening of December 30th. That evening, he went to his favorite bowling alley and played for a few hours, then went home. At that time, Nikki was at a hotel with her lover, Earl. She planned to return home later that evening to gather her belongings before their trip to Texas. When she got to their house, she found Chad drunk and he started abusing her again. He physically attacked her and she stated that during such moments, she would simply leave. However, Nikki then shifted the conversation to more abstract topics. She expressed frustration about Chad's drinking and gambling losses. The investigator had to press her again to continue answering questions. Unexpectedly, She revealed that she had returned home that night not alone, but with her lover, Earl. Chad was clearly upset by this and started yelling at her, prompting her to leave the house. Nikki claimed to have heard a heated argument and a struggle between Earl and Chad, followed by a bang. However, she did not ask Earl what happened. According to Nikki, they simply got into the car and drove away in silence. At this point, Nikki wrote a confession and placed it on the table. Then she decided to tear the paper. However, the detective quickly grabbed the confession from her hands. This action further aroused suspicion, leading the police to conclude that Nikki was involved in the death of her husband, Chad. Furthermore, while investigating the crime scene at Chad's home, detectives found a surveillance camera. They retrieved the video footage, which revealed crucial information. Earl and Nikki arrived at the house around 10 p.m. on December 30th, approximately half an hour before Chad left the bowling alley. They went inside and spent about 20 minutes in the house before coming out with several boxes. This was important evidence as it indicated that Nikki was at the crime scene before Chad's return. Detectives theorized that she was potentially removing her possessions to protect them from a planned fire, which enabled them to charge her with premeditated involvement. It was important to fully restore the evidence, as the circumstantial evidence alone could seem unconvincing to the jury. After this, Chad returned home around 10:30 p.m., seemingly unaware that Nikki and Earl had been at their house just before 1 a.m. Nikki and Earl returned to the house. They went inside, and shortly after, nearly all the security cameras stopped recording. Only one camera, which monitored the driveway, continued to operate. This limited footage did not capture everything that occurred afterward. They eventually left the house and drove away. Cigarettes found inside matched those smoked by Earl, but none were fully smoked. They appeared to have been lit and then carelessly discarded on the furniture and floor, creating a fire hazard. This suggested a deliberate setup. Moreover, it was revealed that Nikki was the sole beneficiary of the house insurance policy, valued at $1.26000. She was arrested on January 7th for conspiracy to commit murder. Although her bail was set at $1.500,000, she could not afford it and remained in jail. Additionally, Nikki had 3 previous convictions for fraud and was on house arrest at the time of her arrest. Investigators went to Earl's house to arrest him and take his statement, but he fled. However, he was not able to evade justice for long. 2 days later, he was arrested in Michigan near the Canadian border. He was trying to escape to his home country to avoid prosecution in the United States. When arrested, he did not resist. After the arrest, police gathered more information from him, which helped clarify the incident of that night. Nikki and Earl had more motives for committing the crime than just collecting an insurance payout on the house. Their relationship lasted for over a year. At one point, she shared with Earl that Chad had $1,600 life insurance policy. They believed that this money could solve their problems and allow them to live comfortably. She wanted to avoid the complications of divorce and the division of assets, so she chose a darker and more lucrative option. They planned to kill Chad and make it appear that he took his end life. Their goal was to collect all the insurance money they could, both life and property, and then run away to Texas together. On December 9th, they finalized their plan and set it into motion. To prevent her children from witnessing the crime, Nikki sent them to stay with their grandmother. Knowing that Chad was going bowling that night, Nikki went to their home early to gather belongings she wanted to save from a fire. CCTV footage from the hotel captured her and Earl bringing their items to their room. Later, they returned to the scene of the crime, where Nikki disabled the cameras and the security system. Earl was armed, but it is unclear who actually killed Chad as they blamed each other. Apparently, the murder happened while Chad was sleeping. He was attacked in the back. He died instantly. Then his body was turned upside down and his face was attacked to make it appear that he had injured himself. Earl and Nikki thought that burning the house down would destroy all evidence, making it difficult for forensics to find any clues. They then scattered whiskey bottles around the house to portray Chad as a heavy drinker. Finally, they put a gas heater in the room, lit it, and left, expecting it to cause a fire. The following day, they anxiously awaited news of the incident, but nothing came. Frustrated, They returned to the house and discovered some small, weak fires that had already gone out. To ensure a more effective blaze, they rearranged the mattress and other items to facilitate burning. Earl went down to the basement and started a fire directly above the stove. Meanwhile, Nikki scattered cigarettes around the room, believing their plan would succeed. They left, but for the next 2 days, there was no news about the fire. Fearing their plan had failed, they returned to the scene. On January 2nd at 5 p.m., when Nikki opened the door, a backdraft caused the fire to flare up. However, their plan failed, as the house did not burn down as they expected. During the investigation, detectives discovered fingerprints and DNA evidence from both Nikki and Earl. The poor staging of the scene was quickly discovered. Even the placement of the weapon on the bed suggested an attempt to mislead the investigation. If Chad injured himself, the weapon wouldn't be placed that way. This detail became a key argument for the prosecution at trial and was persuasive to the jury. Nikki and Earl were charged with murder. At the last minute, Earl agreed to a plea bargain, which allowed the prosecution to learn all the details of the crime. Earl Howard pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit arson and tampering with evidence. As a result, he received a 25-year prison sentence with the possibility of parole after serving 21 years. During the trial, he and Nikki blamed each other. Earl's plea deal included testifying against Nikki. In contrast, she maintained her innocence, claiming she was outside when the shooting occurred and that Earl was the shooter. She also accused Earl of lighting fires and throwing away cigarettes. During a subsequent interrogation, Nikki told bizarre stories, claiming that Chad was aware of her affair and had allowed her to meet Earl. She also stated that Earl and her husband were friends. Nikki described her husband as an alcoholic, but those close to the family disagreed, stating that Chad did not drink heavily, did not abuse Nikki, and would not permit her to be with Earl. Chad never made anyone doubt his character. No one had ever seen him drunk, and he always prioritized his family career. Therefore, no one believed that he was a bad husband. They thought Nikki had fabricated the stories right away. On February 17, 2023, Nikki Entzel was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and attempting to cover up the crime. On March 16, 2023, she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 36 years, plus an additional 15 years for arson. The sentence was controversial, as Nikki's punishment was harsher than Earl's, despite evidence that he played a key role in the crime. The disparity in sentencing was attributed to Earl admitting guilt and cooperating with the investigation, while Nikki did not. However, the court's decision was final, allowing her to file her first appeal as early as 2026. On March 13, 2018, employees from a tree-cutting service discovered a human skull in a wooded area where they were working, alongside Champion Hill Road in Bolton, Mississippi. Officers from the Hinds County Sheriff's Office found additional skeletal remains in the area, belonging to the same person. It could not be determined how the person lost their life, but it was noted that the remains were partially burned. What investigators could determine was that the remains belonged to a black woman that was likely under the age of 30. Unfortunately, not much else could be learned because only a partial set of remains were found. After investigators exhausted traditional methods of identifying the woman, they were no closer in doing so and the case went cold. In 2021, the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office partnered with Othram Lab to finally identify the woman. Othram used forensic-grade genome sequencing to develop a comprehensive geological profile from the burned skeletal remains. The condition of the remains necessitated additional processing steps to make DNA suitable for advanced testing. After multiple rounds of testing, both scientists were able to build the necessary profile to enable genealogical search. The costs associated with the case were funded by Mississippi native and philanthropist Carla Davis. In addition, Carla Davis led the genealogical research to search for possible family members of the unidentified woman. Investigative leads were returned to law enforcement, and in a follow-up investigation paired with rapid familial testing, the unknown woman's relationship to a close family relative was established. The investigation confirmed in May of 2022 that the unknown woman was Wanita Diane Roxy Coleman. Wanita was reported missing in Namas and also the Charlie Project. According to the Charlie Project, Coleman was last seen in the 1500 block of Diane Drive in Jackson, Mississippi on April 1, 2016. She would have been 19 years old at the time of her disappearance. Her family heard rumors that she was shot in the face, but there was no confirmation or additional details available at the time. An investigation into who took her life continues. Anyone with information about Wanita should contact Detective Sharon Jordan of Jackson Police Department Special Victims Unit at this number. In March of 1976, human remains belonging to an unknown man were found in the Cape Fear River near the CPNL plant intake valve near Munker in Chatham County, North Carolina. Investigators thought that the unknown man might have been put in the water upstream via the Hall River or Deep River. The man had appeared to have an athletic build and was likely in good health before he lost his life. When his head and hands could not be found with a body, Chatham County deputies subsequently opened a homicide investigation into the case. With few clues to the man's identity, the case went cold. The unknown man, eventually known as Chatham County John Doe, was estimated to be a Caucasian male, likely between 25 and 35 years old. He was 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighed 150 pounds. The unidentified persons case was entered into Namas in 2008, but traditional forensic methods did not yield answers on the case. Although early investigation into the case was hampered by a lack of basic information or viable clues, members of the Chatham County Sheriff's Office remained open to new methods and opportunities to identify the deceased. Chatham County Sheriff's Office investigator Ricky Culberson eventually connected with the North Carolina Unidentified Project, an initiative that was co-founded by Dr. and Ross and Leslie Kaufman in 2020 to raise and provide funding for assistance with unidentified persons cases. In the fall of 2021, Chatham County Sheriff's Office and the North Carolina Unidentified Project partnered with Othroom to use forensic-grade genome sequencing to develop a comprehensive genealogical profile from the skeletal remains of the Chatham County John Doe. After building the profile, Othroom scientists returned the profile and the investigation continued. Leslie Kaufman, working with Chatham County Sheriff's Office, used genetic genealogy to develop investigative leads pointing to the unknown man's identity. The leads were confirmed through additional testing and established Chatham County John Doe's true identity as Jimmy Macbrooks. Jimmy was born on February 16, 1950 in Allegheny County, North Carolina. He would have been 26 years old at the time his life was taken. He was an Army veteran and had been stationed in Fort Bragg and had left the service only a few years before his demise. The Chatham County Sheriff's Office is now asking members of the public to share what they know regarding the life and death of Jimmy Macbrooks. Investigators say a single small detail could potentially lead to the next big leap in the case. Anyone with information about this case is asked to contact the Chatham County Sheriff's Office at this number. The case of Rosa Peral. Rosa Peral was born in Barcelona, a city in the province of Barcelona. Rosa was a beautiful girl, but she had difficulty studying. At the age of 16, while still in school, she started working in a nightclub, first as a dancer and then as a waitress. While working at the nightclub, Rosa met many men. It is said that many of them came to the club just to meet and get to know her. In 2000, while working there, she met Ruben, a musician who had just started working at the same club. They quickly fell in love. Eventually, they decided to leave the nightlife behind. Rosa quit her job at the nightclub and joined the Barcelona City Police. Ruben followed her shortly after, but he chose to join the Catalonian Autonomous Police. After 10 years of living together, Rosa and Ruben had 2 daughters, whose names were not disclosed. A year after the birth of their second daughter, Rosa and Ruben got married. Friends and family described Rosa as selfish and lacking in empathy, often showing indifference and cruelty towards others. During her 10 years of marriage to Ruben, Rosa remained intimate with many other men, even continuing these relationships after they had children and got married. Ruben apparently did not know about Rosa's infidelity until she began a relationship with a man named Oscar, whose last name is not provided. Oscar was a sub-inspector at a police station where, in early 2008, intimate photos of Rosa were circulated, and she identified Oscar as a suspect. However, The case did not attract the attention of the court at the time and was closed. Years later, after it was revealed that Rosa was married, the case resurfaced and went to trial. Although the prosecution sought a prison sentence for Oscar for distributing the photos, the court was unable to prove his guilt due to insufficient evidence, resulting in his acquittal. Although this disturbing incident damaged Rosa's reputation among her colleagues and friends, she continued with her life. She then met a man named Pedro Rodriguez, and they quickly began a romantic relationship. Not much is known about his life before meeting Rosa, except that he was married to a woman named Patricia, with whom he had a child. Pedro also worked in the Guardia, like Ruben. After starting a relationship with Rosa, Pedro asked his wife for a divorce. Patricia learned from a friend that Pedro had been seen with a woman and 2 young daughters. Although Patricia did not know who they were, she suspected that Pedro was leading a double life, even though he claimed that he had never cheated during their marriage. Ruben discovered that his wife was having an affair with another police officer, Pedro, and decided to end the infidelity. He filed for divorce and ended his relationship with Rosa. A few months later, Rosa moved to another city with her daughters. At first, things seemed fine, but Rosa and Pedro's happiness did not last long, and their relationship quickly became strained. Both were prone to jealousy and emotional outbursts, leading to frequent arguments. The situation worsened when Albert, a man with whom Rosa was having an affair, showed up. Albert Lopez also worked in the Catalonia City Police Department, and their relationship began when they were patrol partners. Rosa maintained a complicated relationship with several men at the same time. One day at work, Albert was questioned about the death of a homeless man he had arrested during an operation against illegal street vendors. Rosa had been with Albert that day, and they claimed that the street vendor had attacked her with a knife before jumping off a 75-foot cliff. Despite many suspicious details, the police have no official evidence linking Albert to the incident. His co-workers described him as ruthless and powerful, noting that he used drugs to increase his muscle mass. Some acquaintances also labeled him as manipulative. After discovering that Rosa was married to Pedro, Albert sent her an incriminating recording of their conversation. On May 4, 2017, a resident discovered a burned-out car. When the police arrived, they were shocked to find the remains of a man in the trunk. Experts determined that the car belonged to Pedro Rodriguez, but they were cautious not to assume that the body was his. They began searching for Pedro to confirm his whereabouts, starting by checking to see if he was on duty. He had been suspended from work at the time due to an alleged assault. They then went to Pedro's ex-wife, Patricia. She was surprised to see the police. Patricia explained that she had been waiting for Pedro to pick up their children, but he had not arrived, and she had not been able to contact him. Since Pedro was missing, the police decided to contact Rosa. Rosa said she did not know Pedro's whereabouts, and mentioned that a few days prior, she had a disagreement with him about her ex-husband, Ruben, which forced her to leave the house. The body was found completely charred, making identification difficult. The body was then sent for an autopsy. The police identified the body through dental records as Pedro Rodriguez. They began an investigation suspecting that Rosa's ex-husband Ruben may have been involved in the case. After questioning Ruben, he stated that he was on duty at the time of Pedro's death. His alibi was confirmed, causing the police to refocus their attention on Rosa. They quickly dismissed the theory that Rosa's ex-husband was the killer. They discovered that Rosa had an affair with Albert, leading them to speculate that Pedro may have known about it, potentially providing a motive for the murder. Rosa was brought in for questioning. She alleged that Albert was the one who killed Pedro. She claimed that on the night of May 1st, Albert came to her house armed and angry and forced her to lock herself and her children on the top floor. He threatened her, warning that her daughters would be in danger if she reported him. This made her feel that she needed to protect them. Rosa's testimony led to Albert's arrest. During questioning, Albert denied all of Rosa's accusations and accused her of killing Pedro. He claimed that Rosa had called him on the night of the incident, and when he arrived, he found Pedro's body in the trunk of his car. He tried to convince Rosa to contact the police, but she refused. He argued that he felt he had no choice but to help cover up the crime. Ultimately, Despite their attempts to blame each other, technology uncovered the truth. Geolocation data from Rosa and Albert's cell phones showed that they were present at the location where Pedro's body was discovered. Additionally, the data indicated that before Pedro's cell phone stopped sending signals, all 3 phones were at the house where Rosa lived with her 2 daughters and Pedro. This new evidence led to the arrest of Rosa and Albert on May 13, 2017, and they remained in custody until the case went to trial. Rosa was taken to Buttra Women's Prison, and the trial began on February 3, 2020, 3 years after Pedro's death. During the trial, both Rosa and Albert claimed innocence and testified against each other. Rosa stated that she was one of the few witnesses to the incident, asserting that her children were sleeping upstairs when Albert came to their home armed. This contradicted her previous statement, in which she said that the children had witnessed everything from the beginning. Additionally, her account did not match that of Antonia, who was with Ruben, the children's father, at the time. Antonia testified that her eldest daughter told her she saw her mother covered in blood on the night Pedro was believed to have died. However, the court dismissed Antonia's testimony. As the trial continued, Rosa's true nature began to come to light. Several disturbing details emerged, including intimate text messages exchanged between Rosa and Albert on the day of Pedro's death. A friend of Rosa's testified that Rosa had planned to start a serious relationship with one of the 2 men. The friend revealed that Rosa had confided in her that she was leaning toward Pedro because she found him more attractive and a better lover. The lawyer representing Pedro's family claimed that the relationship between Rosa and Pedro was deteriorating. He argued that Pedro may have had information that could threaten Rosa and Albert's interests regarding the suspicious death of a street vendor. The lawyer claimed that Albert and Rosa wanted to prevent Pedro from revealing evidence against them, which motivated their decision to kill him. The judge confirmed that Albert and Rosa had jointly decided to kill Pedro, the only witness, and that they had planned the crime throughout April. He found that they had given inconsistent statements and changed their testimonies during the investigation. Unfortunately, the exact cause of Pedro's murder could not be determined. By the end of March 2020, a jury had found Rosa Peral and Albert Lopez guilty of the intentional murder of Pedro Rodriguez. Albert was sentenced to 20 years in prison, while Rosa received a 25-year sentence. The court also ordered both defendants to pay $885,000 in compensation to Pedro's family. Although the trial ended with a guilty verdict, the situation did not end there. Even while in prison, Rosa attracted considerable media attention due to her disruptive and chaotic behavior, which led to her being transferred from facility to facility during the first 2 years of her sentence. Ruben did not allow his daughters to visit Rosa in prison. But then Ruben allowed the children to see Rosa. After Rosa had served 4 years and had multiple disciplinary violations, she was transferred to another prison for the 5th time due to her role in inciting conflicts with other inmates. The prison authorities decided to transfer her to Rick Prison. Rosa's intimate relationships continued after her sentencing. After her incarceration, Rosa learned of her mother's death, which caused her great distress due to her separation from her family. Reports indicate that Rosa's mother's mental health had deteriorated, which is why she was absent from the trial. Rosa's father, who spoke to the media, stated that due to his wife's declining mental condition, she did not understand the circumstances surrounding their daughter's incarceration. Claimed that when her mother was ill, she used her authorized prison calls to check on her well-being. However, police received anonymous information suggesting that Rosa had also used these calls to contact a hitman and plot the murder of her ex-husband, Ruben. As of early October 2023, the truth of these claims is still under investigation. During her first 100 days in prison, Rosa used her phone calls to contact media representatives and film producers interested in her story. Even though this contact was not authorized by the prison, she may have used intermediaries to make these calls. A notable project related to Rosa's case is a documentary titled The Rosa Pearl Tapes based on her final interview. In this interview, Rosa strongly proclaimed her innocence and argued that she was a victim of social injustice, claiming that she had been unjustly condemned. Media reports stated that journalists, prosecutors, and lawyers involved in Rosa's trial had filed complaints against the producers. They claimed that the show was designed to portray the convicts from the perspective of the victims and distort the truth. In addition, Rosa collaborated with others to create a series called Body on Fire, which detailed the events surrounding Pedro's death and the subsequent arrest of Rosa and Albert. This project also caused considerable controversy. After watching some excerpts, Rosa expressed her dissatisfaction, stating that the story presented to the screenwriters undermined her dignity and could negatively impact her integration into society. With the support of a lawyer, Rosa tried to stop the release of the show by filing a lawsuit against its creators. Unfortunately, her efforts were unsuccessful, as 8 episodes were released on a popular channel on September 8, 2023. The lawsuit against the creators of the series did not make much progress, and the court dismissed her request. Undaunted, Rosa managed to bypass prison security and gave an interview to a public radio station. During the interview, Rosa expressed concern that the series might negatively affect her law studies, which she had begun while in prison to create a better future for her daughters after her sentence ended. The police then restricted her communication with the outside world, allowing contact only with close family members. Meanwhile, the legal representative of Pedro's family requested that all income from the series and documentaries that Rosa and Albert received be confiscated. It is clear that Rosa's story will continue to be told. We can only hope that her children, who have also been affected by these events, will not suffer any further and will receive the support they need to cope with the challenges they have faced and will continue to face. A chilly shadow loomed over the beautiful city of Green Bay for almost 40 years. A chilling story about a murder that remained unsolved. The tragic end of a promising life set the tone for this heartbreaking story. The life of Lisa Holstead, a young woman of 22 years who was killed on August 12, 1986. Haunted by the memory of Lisa's tragically short life, the people of Green Bay yearned for justice for years, before it was finally resolved in 2023. The case had for years been relegated to the category of cold, forgotten mysteries. After all these years, how did the killer get caught by the police? Why did the resolution of this case take so long? Bay Area, Wisconsin, a city on the shores of Lake Michigan, is well known for its illustrious football history and its residents' ardent support of the Green Bay Packers. The city is well known for its fervor for football. In addition, the city provides nature enthusiasts with a tranquil place to stay in Green Bay thanks to its breathtaking scenery and landscapes. Green Bay is known for its family-oriented lifestyle, where residents get to know one another by name and share familial ties. However, in 1986, a horrible murder occurred right in this neighborhood, shattering the entire community. Lisa Holstead was a young lady who lived in the center of Green Bay, Wisconsin. She was the daughter of Mary and Robert Holstead and was born on May 12, 1964. Her teenage years were woven together with love and laughter, and she was raised in a close-knit neighborhood that resembled an extended family. Traveling was one of Lisa's favorite pastimes. She spent hours using the lens of her camera to capture the beauty she sued. Her goals extended beyond simple exploration. Her dream also included sharing her passion for books with other book lovers by starting a small, inviting bookstore stocked with vintage titles. Lisa was notable from a young age for her kind heart and sharp mind. Her curiosity about her surroundings was endless. She had a constant desire to learn and explore. She was drawn to the natural beauty of her surroundings even as a baby. She found comfort in the verdant Canours nature area, with its meandering trails and plethora of wildlife. She frequently visited nearby shelters to provide consolation to the unfortunate. She also loved animals, and she frequently took in and showed love to stray animals. Her bond with the Canours nature area grew stronger. Most of her time was spent assisting people. Nobody had predicted the harsh destiny that would befall her. Appending the tranquility of her cherished safe haven, Lisa Holstead vanished in the Canours nature area on August 12, 1986, on an unfortunate day. Her parents became concerned when she didn't come back for a while, as they looked for her everywhere and hoped to learn about her whereabouts. Fear took hold of them. The once vibrant community felt the weight of uncertainty overwhelm it as the sun started to set. The loss of their cherished Lisa startled the neighbors and friends of the Holsteads. Fear took hold of everyone as they looked for her in vain. They soon began to wonder what might have happened to Lisa. Green Bay was in a panic because no one was responding to their inquiries. With trembling voices, residents called the Green Bay Police Department and explained how serious the situation was. They had no idea that the tragic death of their beloved Lisa Holstead would spark a passionate, multi-decade search for explanations. On August 12th, that same day, she was discovered dead in a marshy area of Canoe, Arizona. After prompt notification, Green Bay police officers arrived at the scene. Lisa had clearly been strangled because there was a piece of clothing around her neck that belonged to her. It was discovered that she had really been attacked and murdered. Beyond the crime, the community's suffering was unspeakable. The formerly charming Kenua's nature area turned into an eerie reminder of death and the horrible truth concealed by its flora. The community's mutual sorrow served as evidence of Lisa's significant influence on their lives. The crime scene was examined by Green Bay Police Department detectives. Their minds were already racing with questions. They wondered who did it and why. Early investigations revealed horrific torture and acts of violence. Lisa had been beaten and strangled. As the autopsy results horrifyingly revealed, the murderer could not be located by the Green Bay Police Department. From the crime scene, they gathered a lot of evidence, including DNA that they hoped would one day aid in the case's resolution. There was a general sense of unease and anxiety throughout the community of Green Bay. Obstacles kept coming up as the investigation got more thorough, although witness statements suggested potential suspects. Lisa's killer eluded capture. Detectives used every resource at their disposal to find the murderer, but the convincing alibis stood in their way every step of the way. The goal of the detectives was to uncover the real reason behind Lisa's death. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to uncover the necessary evidence to fully investigate the case. Investigators never gave up looking for the truth, but in the end, the case went cold despite their unwavering efforts. The once hot pursuit turned into an enigmatic riddle with unknown answers. Lisa's remembrance stayed, a horrific flashback to a horrible murder and an unsolved crime. The terrible murder of Lisa Holstead went unsolved for many years, perplexing detectives and the victim's family who were hoping for answers. In 2020, fresh hope materialized with the resumption of the killer's search. Consistent and unwavering in her pursuit of the truth, Detective Rachel Turner developed a strong interest in the cold case. Lisa's loved ones were given hope when the case was decided to be reopened because of the detective's unwavering commitment to justice. Under Detective Turner's direction, the team worked very hard to reopen the case. They were hoping to find something that would lead to the case's solution. They conducted in-depth witness interviews and a thorough investigation. All of the previous evidence was once more accessible and looked into. When the DNA discovered that the crime scene was re-examined using the most recent genetic engineering technology, there was a significant turning point in the case. In April 2022, the DNA sample was sent to Othram, a well-known genetic engineering lab in Texas. Othram experts got to work investigating this. In an effort to apprehend the offender, the DNA was extracted and uploaded to the national database. Everyone was awaiting good news regarding the case. At last, the name of a suspect showed up in the database, but there was a glitch. It did not match directly. In order to locate the precise match, Othram's experts laboriously traced the entire family tree. Surprisingly, when Detective Turner dug deeper into her investigation, she discovered that the suspect whose DNA was discovered had been to Green Bay in Nargis, 1986, the month Lisa was murdered. Lou Griffin was his name, and he was a culprit to additional criminal cases. Lou Griffin's name had become associated with evil following his horrible killing of Lisa. He was raised by his parents after being born on July 12, 1955, in a small town in Illinois. As he grew older, he displayed a range of emotions, from charming moments to unsettling coldness. Though he had an innocent childhood on the surface, there were deeper problems hiding beneath. Lou's early schooling appeared promising, but his success quickly gave way to unfocused conduct. His early disobedience resulted in small-time criminal activity, which he eventually became more involved in. Additionally, he married Emily, with whom he had 2 children. Upon scrutinizing his criminal history, an astonishing trend became apparent. It began in 1970, when Lou Griffin was charged with assault and larceny, which marked the start of his dark journey. He progressed to more serious offenses like robbery and assault in the 1980s. Lou was sentenced to prison in 1981 after being found guilty of the felony of second-degree assault. In the middle of the 1980s, after completing his sentence, he relocated to Green Bay, Wisconsin. His most horrific crimes took place in the summer of 1986. He met 22-year-old Lisa Holstead in a marshy section of the Kennears Nature area one regrettable night. He attacked the young woman, strangled her, and left her lifeless because of his evil instincts. Lou Griffin believed he had gotten away with it, but as the investigation went on in 2020, more and more evidence came to light against him. Investigators had documentation of the previous crimes he had committed. It presented a bleak image of a man who showed little regard for human life. It took years of unrelenting investigation and pursuit of justice. But at last the name Lou Griffin reverberated through the Green Bay Police Department hallways. He was taken into custody for Lisa Holstead's murder. Based on the DNA discovered at the crime scene, he was charged with murder. Lou Griffin, an egregious criminal, was taken into custody on January 15, 2021. Lou Griffin was forced to deal with the fallout from his crime due to the gravity of his deeds. The graphic picture of Lisa Holstead's lifeless body in front of the arresting officers was a painful reminder of the harm he had caused the victim's family, who had banded together to seek justice, at last found some solace in the knowledge that the man who killed their daughter was being held in police custody. It was finally the end of Lou Griffin's terror. With him behind bars, the Green Bay community, which had been living in constant fear, was finally able to exhale in relief. Not only did Lou Griffin's arrest signal the conclusion of a cold case, but it also demonstrated the community's strength, the investigators' unwavering commitment, and the tenacity of the victim's family. Lou Griffin was the center of attention early in the trial. After his arrest, he was held in the county jail, waiting for the day to come when he would have to face the consequences of his terrible acts. On March 27, 2023, the trial began with the introduction of both parties' witnesses and evidence. Lou Griffin's attorney, Richard Jerkins, was positive he would get out of court. He continued by saying that there wasn't enough evidence to convict him, and that there might have been other explanations for his DNA being found at the crime scene. However, Lisa's attorney, Sarah Johnson, the district attorney, contested Richard's statements in court. She listed a lengthy history of his crimes. As it happened, Lisa wasn't Lou Griffin's only victim. This heinous killer also took many other lives. The case changed course from there. An additional witness who had previously been reluctant to appear in court came forward to testify. This strengthened Lisa's case even more. It also helped in refuting Lou's assertions and seeking Lisa's justice. On July 18, 2023, the jury finally rendered a verdict following all the trials, finding Lou Griffin guilty and filing a first-degree murder charge. The choice was made with Lisa's case in mind as well as his criminal history. When the verdict was read in court, there was a long pause. Lou was given a life sentence for the murder of Lisa Holstead, which effectively sealed his fate. Mixed emotions were present in the courtroom. Justice for the victim's family, sadness for the life lost, and relief that a horrible criminal was at last in prison. People were at last relieved to hear of Lou's arrest. Regarding Lisa's case, they had witnessed many decades of uncertainty. Some even gave up on the possibility that this case would ever be resolved. But it was. It gave people a sense of peace and restored their faith in the legal system. Robert Holstead, Lisa's father, was moved by the court's ruling. The wait was excruciating, but knowing that the man responsible for our daughter's death has finally been held accountable brings some comfort. He said in response to a journalist's question about his comments, even after the criminal's punishment was announced by the court, Robert continued to cry. Meanwhile, there was still something heavy on Lisa's mother's chest. She could not get her daughter back. There is no sentence that can fill the void in our hearts, she said, holding Lisa's portrait in her hands and crying. We miss her every day. The detectives and Lisa's lawyer, Sarah Johnson, put forth a lot of effort to ensure Lisa received justice. When their efforts at last paid off, they were all grinning. They were happy with what they had accomplished. They brought justice and the confidence of the public back, and they taught all criminals a harsh lesson. Her parents were interviewed by several media outlets. They recalled Lisa by relating numerous fascinating stories about her. They extolled her kindness and compassion to the media. As the sun set over the city, Green Bay welcomed a fresh sense of closure. The once cold case was now a symbol of the human spirit's tenacity rather than a horrifying mystery. Bridegan was born in 1989 in Florida into a modest family where he was the second of two sons. He grew up alongside his older brother Adam. They were practically inseparable from childhood. Their parents were devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As a teenager, Jared met a girl named Mallory Bowden at church. The two developed a romantic relationship, and Bowden would later refer to Jared as her first true love. However, their relationship never led to marriage since cohabitation was discouraged within their religious community. Divorces can sometimes take dark turns with tragic outcomes. Jared Bridegan's story is an example where former partners became bitter enemies, leading to catastrophic results for both families involved and their children left behind. When Jared graduated from a Florida arts high school in 2007 and decided to continue his education in another state, they went their separate ways. Jared moved to Utah, where he enrolled in college and met his future first wife in 9. At the age of 20, Jared Bridegan encountered a woman named Shinana Gardner at a friend's birthday party. She was 2 years older and came from a well-off family. She was also a member of the Youth of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Shinana was born in 1987. Her parents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, were co-founders of a major company called Stampin' Up, specializing in the production and sale of decorative craft items. By 2010, it was reported that their family business, headquartered in Salt Lake City, was generating annual revenue of $100 million. Shinana has a sister named Sarah, who currently holds a managerial position in the family business. Growing up in such an affluent family, Shinana enjoyed a life of luxury and leisure without ever needing to work in her trained profession as a chef. She was described as enthusiastic and somewhat capricious. Initially, according to sources mentioned earlier, Jared wasn't particularly interested in his new acquaintance. Nevertheless, Shinana made significant efforts to entice him with her lavish lifestyle, suggesting they could travel the world together and live freely, since her parents would financially support them. Family life progressed swiftly with the birth of twins, just a few months after their first meeting. The couple got engaged quickly, and by early 2010, less than a year after they met, they celebrated an extravagant wedding in a temple in Salt Lake City, Utah. The Gardner family covered all expenses for both ceremony and reception. This rapid progression towards marriage was influenced by their religious beliefs that disapproved of cohabitation and lengthy engagements. Following their wedding, the newlyweds settled in Utah. Here, the bride's parents assisted them in purchasing a comfortable home valued at approximately $1 million. Each had their own Mercedes, despite Jared still being a student at the time and Shinana not working at all. The couple traveled extensively worldwide, sharing numerous photos of their exciting trips, expensive purchases, and leisure activities on social media profiles. According to close acquaintances, Shauna's parents provided the couple approximately $10,000 monthly for various expenses and granted them access to their accounts. When Jared completed his degree, his in-laws generously gave him $100,000 to start his own. In 2013, the couple welcomed twins, a daughter named Abigail and a son named Liam. The family relocated to Connecticut temporarily, but soon after, Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues. Doctors recommended moving closer to the sea for the child's health benefits. Consequently, the family moved to Florida and purchased a comfortable 2-story home near the coastline at Ponte Vedra Beach, south of Jacksonville. At this time, Shauna actively managed her social media blog, portraying herself as a loving wife, a caring mother of twins, a professional chef, and an individual passionate about travel and sports. She took fitness seriously and frequented the gym nearly every day. Observing her dedication, Jared decided to surprise her by hiring a personal trainer. The scandalous divorce started shortly after this move. Clear issues began surfacing in the marriage. Even though the couple pretended everything was fine, Shauna became disillusioned with their religion and nearly stopped attending church services, while her husband remained a devout member. This difference in religious commitment led to frequent arguments and tension. Reportedly, Shauna also felt disillusioned with Jared, as she perceived him to be lazy, having gained weight and only half-heartedly attempting to get his business off the ground. After completing online courses in programming and design, secured a position at Microsoft, where he began earning independently. A few years later, he advanced to a senior manager role. However, the couple continued to grow increasingly distant. Arguments became routine in their household. The situation worsened when Jared accidentally discovered intimate exchanges between his wife and her personal fitness trainer. According to several sources, Shauna allegedly had an affair, which the trainer confirmed in a phone conversation with Jared. However, Shauna strongly denied these claims. Jared later contacted Mela Bowden via email, expressing concern that his wife had become distant and emotionally attached to her gym trainer. Despite this, he showed a willingness to forgive the infidelity in order to keep their family together for the sake of their children. In 2015, after nearly 6 years of marriage, the couple began a contentious and scandalous divorce process. They disagreed over shared assets and custody rights for their children in a far from amicable manner. Jared accused his ex-wife publicly of infidelity, which she categorically denied, stating that the marriage had merely lost its love. In response, she accused him of cruelty and offensive behavior. Shauna was firm about not dividing their home, cars, and bank account funds. She argued that nearly everything they had acquired over the years was bought or gifted by her parents. Jared had only started working less than a year prior. Before this, he focused on his studies and unsuccessfully tried to establish his business using funds from his in-laws. Jared contested her viewpoint, claiming at least half of their Florida home. Custody of the twins also led to numerous disputes. Shauna alleged that whenever Jared was with the children, he tried to turn them against her. He supposedly coached them on what to say about their mother and recorded their statements to present in court. Jared countered by accusing his ex-wife of comprehensive surveillance, installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and placing a tracker in his car to monitor his movements. Shauna sought sole custody of the children and exclusive ownership of their seaside home. She also claimed Jared threatened to withdraw all the money from their children's trust funds for his personal use. Jared responded with allegations that Shauna evaded taxes by working off the books at her parents' company and receiving tens of thousands of dollars this way. New families, old disputes. By the end of 2015, the court had mandated joint custody of the children. But that hardly put an end to the disputes between Jared and Shauna. Even after their divorce was officially finalized, they continued to meet in court for nearly 7 more years. This led up to the tragic conclusion of their saga. By this time, both had moved on to start new families, have more children. In 2016, Jared met a woman named Christina, a fellow Microsoft employee who lived and worked in North Carolina. Initially, their interactions were strictly professional. However, they gradually grew closer, and a few months later, Christina moved to Florida to be with Jared. In the fall of 2017, they married, and by February 2019, they welcomed their first child together, a daughter named Bexley. In August 2021, their son London was born. Shauna also remarried in 2018, tying the knot with Mario Fernandez, a man a year her junior, who owned a real estate business. That same year, they welcomed their son Michael. The family resided in the same house where Shauna had lived with her first husband Jared. This house had been a battleground in their court disputes. The presence of new families didn't calm the waters between the ex-spouses who continued to file lawsuits against each other with new demands. Jared insisted that Shauna's new husband Mario should not be allowed to be with the twins if their mother was absent. Conversely, he wanted his new wife Christina to be fully involved in the upbringing of his older children. The last court meeting between Jared and Shauna occurred 4 months before Jared's death, and it was exceptionally tense. They exchanged another round of mutual accusations and contested rights to their property. Shawnana claimed that Jared was preventing her from using the family's larger, more comfortable vehicle for transporting the children because he was more concerned with humiliating her than with the convenience and safety of his own children. At this point, the court granted Shawnana exclusive rights to use the larger vehicle and ordered Jared to pay her $600 in compensation. For agreement between the ex-spouses, Jared picked up the twins on Wednesdays for a family dinner, including their younger sister Bexley. Christina sometimes joined them, but after the birth of London, she spent most of her time with the newborn, choosing not to leave him with babysitters. On Wednesday, February 22nd, In followed his usual routine. He took the children to a coastal after picking them up. After dinner and a stroll, he returned the twins to their mother's house before heading home on his regular. The trip typically took about 40 minutes, including a deserted stretch of road without streetlights. While driving slowly and cautiously, aware of his 3-year-old daughter asleep in her car seat, Jared encountered an unexpected obstacle around 9 p.m. Suddenly, in the headlights, he saw a tire lying in his lane. He stopped, activated his hazard lights, and got out to move the tire to the side of the road. It was at this moment that gunshots rang out. Jared had no chance to escape. The assailant fired several bullets at close range before fleeing the scene. Thankfully, the child dozing in the car was unharmed. A passerby nearby heard the shots and cautiously approached, discovering Jared lying in a pool of blood. They immediately called police and paramedics, but tragically, it was too late to save him. Regarding the investigation and initial suspicions, Christina called her husband just minutes before the incident. He told her he had just dropped off the children and would be home in about 15 minutes. However, as 30 minutes turned into an hour with no sign of Jared and no answer on his phone, Christina repeatedly tried calling him, until she finally received an answer from a police officer who informed her of what had happened and requested her immediate presence at the Jacksonville Beach Police Station. The investigation team determined that the tire in the road caused Jared's vehicle to stop. They concluded he exited his car to remove it, but was then shot. His 3-year-old daughter remained unharmed in the car, indicating she wasn't the target. Additionally, no valuables were missing from Jared's vehicle. A wallet with cash, a phone and a tablet were left untouched, dismissing robbery as a motive. The theory of robbery arose almost immediately when inquiries were made about whether her husband had any known adversaries, antagonists, or recent disputes. Christina stated that she was unaware of wishing harm upon her husband, aside from his first wife, Shauna. However, she refrained from making direct accusations without indisputable evidence. The police reported a lack of surveillance footage due to the absence of cameras along the stretch of road where the incident occurred. A witness who heard the shots claimed that they broke the quiet of the night without being preceded by screeching brakes, loud screams, or any other sounds. They did hear a vehicle speeding away, though nothing was visible in the darkness. Christina's suggestion of Shauna's involvement in the crime seemed plausible to investigators, though it was unlikely she acted directly, especially given her solid alibi. She was at home with her husband, twins, younger son, and parents who were visiting. The police decided to check nearby surveillance cameras. The footage showed an old dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident and leaving a few minutes after the shots were reported by the witness. Detectives turned to the public for assistance in identifying this vehicle of interest. Jared's family made televised appeals urging anyone with even minor information related to the case to come forward. The first suspects arrested, Shauna and her current husband Mario, were repeatedly questioned but vehemently denied any involvement in the murder. Shauna did not hide that her relationship with her ex-husband was complicated, but insisted that she would never wish harm upon the father of her children. She also shared with media outlets how their 9-year-old twins reacted to news of their father's death. Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours while Liam remained in shock and silent for an extended period. It is worth noting that neither Shauna nor Jared's older children attended his funeral. Christina informed Shauna that her presence at the farewell ceremony would be highly unwelcome, to which Shauna responded that if she wasn't allowed to attend, the twins would not attend the burial either. It wasn't until January 2023, nearly a year after Mr. Brand's murder, that the first suspect was arrested. The police remained silent about the investigation's progress, simply noting that it required considerable resources and effort. An exhaustive search for the dark blue Ford F-150 finally bore fruit when the vehicle got involved in an accident but left before the police arrived. This incident occurred in a crowded area with many witnesses, making it easier to identify the offender on the same day thanks to numerous camera recordings. The car belonged to 62-year-old Henry Tynan, an unemployed man with prior convictions. He faced charges of second-degree premeditated murder using a firearm, participation in a criminal conspiracy with intent to commit murder, and setting up an ambush with obstructions for the victim. Jacksonville Beach Police Chief Jonathan Paul Smith and City Prosecutor Melissa Nelson announced these charges during a press conference. They also revealed that Tynan did not act alone and was cooperating by giving testimony against his accomplices. However, no other names were disclosed at that time, to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. Understanding the severity of his charges and the lengthy prison term he faced, Tynan chose to cooperate with law enforcement in hopes that his cooperation would be viewed favorably during sentencing and possibly reduce his punishment. Inside information soon leaked to the press, indicating that Tynan had been renting a small house owned by Mario Fernandez along with a friend. Fernandez's housemate was also questioned, but failed to provide any valuable information about the case, as he had no personal dealings with Fernandez. He merely passed his share of rent through Henry. Following an extensive search of the house, authorities discovered a concealed pistol in the accused room. Ballistic tests later confirmed that this weapon was used in the murder, further implicating Tynan in the crime. On March 16, 2023, Mario Fernandez was arrested after Tynan pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Mario. Tynan identified Mario as the contractor of the crime. Consequently, Fernandez faced charges of first-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, and incitement to commit a serious crime. Rumors circulated that Shinana was the mastermind behind the murder. This was corroborated by her former lover, a fitness trainer, who recounted how she had frequently expressed disdain for her then-husband and wished for his death. A tattoo artist who regularly saw Shinana also testified. She remembered Shinana complaining about her constant legal battles with her ex-husband and expressing a desire to silence him permanently. Initially thought to be a grim joke, Shinana later reiterated her request, signaling her serious intent. Shauna Gardner Fernandez categorically denied all allegations against her. She declared her intention to remain in town and assist with the investigation. However, shortly after her husband's arrest, she relocated to Washington with their twins and youngest son. On August 17, 2023, she faced identical charges as her current husband when she was arrested at her Washington apartment and extradited to Florida to stand trial together with the criminal trio. The motive behind Shinana's alleged actions included complex relationships with her ex-husband, a desire to avoid joint custody of their 2 children, and ambition to solely possess all disputed assets. The case remains ongoing, with continued legal proceedings against all involved conspirators. Tynan has pleaded guilty to all charges and is actively cooperating with investigators in hopes of receiving leniency. Reports indicate that he is facing at least 15 years in prison, a significant duration given his advanced age, potentially equating to a life sentence. Mario Fernandez has partially admitted his guilt, but has exercised his legal rights by refusing to testify against his wife, Shinana Gardner Fernandez. Despite vehemently denying all charges against her, prosecutors are pursuing either the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole for both. Currently, Shinana's 3 children are under the care of their maternal grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, along with their Aunt Sarah. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.